allocations. So if you have dynamic allocation, it's not going to be just appear like an array as a member. It's going to be a pointer. And in the creation of the object, in the constructor, you're going to allocate an array dynamically, maybe. When you copy that object to another, you're just going to copy the pointer. In that case, you have to write your own copy assignment operator. So you're just going to trace this. I'm not going to trace it. By the way, you have to just for every pre-increment, first need to execute this one, alter the array, and then after the end of that operation, then you copy the object. So first you execute that one. That's the idea of pre-increment. So for the online midterm, I'm not going to make the questions that long. So the trace will not take that long. Okay, so the other question, we have a class C, static integer reference f. Okay, so it's a f function returns an integer reference, and the function is a static. Okay, it returns I. What's I? So when we look at the member data, we see that as static integer I. So since this function is a static function, it can access the static data. So we have another the member data integer j. In the public section, we have a constructor, takes an integer, initializes the j member with the value of a. Inside the body of the function, it just does this calculation. I plus j is assigned to I. So I here is the static data, right? Okay, so we have another function print all. So the definition of that print all is here. It just prints j, and prints j. Okay. The second line just assigns j to f. Can I assign j to f? Yeah. Yes, because f returns an integer reference. When I assign j to a, what it does is first calls f, executes it, and returns a reference from that execution, and then I can assign j to that reference. So first you have to resolve this f, then it creates a reference. So if you remember from the static member functions and data, if you have a static member, have to initialize it at the end of the class definition. I forgot the semicolon. Okay, so you have to use scope resolution. You resolve the scope, and this is the static data, and this is the initial value. Okay, it's like defining function prototypes. Okay, then in main I have a C object created. Initial value is 0. 0 is given. 0 will be taken by this. Okay. J will be 0. Okay, for this object. Inside what I do, I just initial value of I is 3, right? So 3 plus 0, 3, and I assign it to I. I is 3 here. Okay, then I call print all function for the object. So first it's going to print. Let's see. First it's going to print its j value. It's 0. Then it's going to call f function. F function will just return a reference for the static data, and then I assign j to that static data, and the static data becomes 0, right? So I was initially 3. Then when I call this, it's going to assign j to it, and I becomes 0. and it's going to print I, that value 0. So in the second object is created, the initial value of j is 3. Here I is 0, right? So 3 plus j, I becomes 3. And then when I call print all, it's going to print j is 3 for that object. And here first I call f returns the reference of the integer, static integer, and I assign 3 to it, and it's going to print I, which is 3. Okay, that last, okay, we have a couple of other questions. Maybe I can show you other type of questions, and tomorrow we can continue with these questions. Okay, let's move to the other section. In the midterm, you're going to see some function implementation questions. So you're going to write part of implementations or the whole implementations of a given description. So it says, write a class named prime, which represents a prime number. You are going to define a class prime. Initially, it holds two or a given number. So that means you have to define a default constructor and another constructor which accepts a number. So then you're going to implement this operator for pre-incrementing the prime number. When incremented, it stores the next bigger prime number. So initially it holds some prime number, either given by the user or the initial value 2. Then when you call this operator, it's going to find the next bigger prime number and set that number to be the data internally. So you can implement print functions, or it doesn't ask anything about that. So I'm just the common things here. So first, needs to compiler. You have to figure that out. It needs to have a prime number is an integer. It has to have an integer data, member data. So how do you find the next prime number algorithmically? So if I just give you 5, okay, give me the next prime number.
Check if it is divisible by up to starting from 2 up to square root of 5.
Okay, so you are checking which number?
If it's n, up to square root of 1.
We don't know n. We are trying to find n. Okay, so
we have a function that tries every.
So you need a loop.
Yeah.
You need a loop. The loop starts from maybe this number. Start from this number, add 1 to that number. Next number is just check if it's a prime number. That's a brute force approach. Okay, so you can do that. And if it's a prime number, then stop. That's the next prime number. Okay, so is this question hard? So the class definition part is easy. So it will be about object-oriented programming. So I will ask you to define classes instead of functions still, but the function will include some algorithm. Yeah, these are you will get partial credit. So for example, if you just decide the member data, you will get 3 points directly. So you have to decide. So here the partial credit may change. Okay. Next question. Write a class named random, which represents a random number. So in one of PS sessions, I think you have seen a random number generation question, right? So okay, so how do you generate a random number? You are just going to call a rand function, but first you have to create a seed and just initialize the random number generation process. And you are going to call a rand. It will just return a random number between a range. You just have to scale it, and so it holds a random number in a given range.